Concord Township Board of Trustees, October 4th, 2017, meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
That sounded good.
Mr. Malczewski?
Present.
Mr. Galloway?
I'm here.
Mrs. Luda?
Here.
Yeah, open that up.
Okay, reports. Amy?
Approval of minutes?
Oh, approval minutes. September 20th, 2017 minutes.
I had no changes.
No
No changes? Okay, and then we will approve the September 20th, 2017 minutes. Amy, report?
Thank you, Mr. Malczewski. As of September 30th, we were 75% of the way through the calendar year. Treasury balance for the 20 active funds within the Township Treasury was $7 million. Treasury balance includes $1 million in funds set aside for specific projects. Year-to-date expenditures were 59% of the amount appropriated for 2017. The revenue received year-to-date is 98% of the amount budgeted for. This includes second half of our 2016 real estate taxes. We are well within budget. We will not be receiving real estate tax revenue again until the end of the first quarter 2018. Tonight I'm going to discuss Fund Number 2021, the Gas Tax Fund. The motor vehicle tax, or gas tax, it is commonly known, began in 1925. Motor vehicle fuel wholesale dealers remit this tax. The amount is distributed by the Ohio Department of Taxation, with the state receiving 75% and all other local governments receiving the remaining 25%. The money must be used for road purposes. Gas tax revenue to local governments has remained stagnant over the last 6 years. If you have any other financial questions, please do not hesitate to call my office, 354-7516. Thank you.
Thank you. Connie?
All I have to report is that I went to an Eagle Scout ceremony on Sunday.
Good.
That's it.
Chris?
Mr. Chairman, like yourself and Connie, we were at the Eastern Lake County Chamber of Commerce
Oh, that's right.
joint luncheon with the Rotary at Quail Hollow Resort. And the most interesting thing to come out of that was an announcement from Quail Hollow Resort ownership that they have pushed out the previous management company that they had hired. The ownership group for Quail Hollow that bought the hotel 2 years ago is actually out of New Zealand, out of Auckland, and they had hired a management group based in outside of Phoenix that had been running the hotel on their behalf for the last couple of years. Sounds as if they've replaced them or removed them, are now managing it directly, and are going to start extensive renovations to the property. So that's a good thing for Concord. It had become a real concern for the township as it relates to its viability and its future success. And it sounds like they're starting some room renovation now, and they're going to be working on the ballroom next. And so it sounds like they'll be putting in a lot of money into that facility. So I know we're happy about that.
Yeah, they're going to bring some of their old events back that I think are very helpful, helpful and very popular.
And as you know, we had started having meetings and discussing with the county what our course of action would be if that hotel were to go under or to shutter, so that it didn't become an empty, vacant, eyesore in the middle of the township. And so I'm thrilled that we don't potentially have to have those kinds of planning and meetings and contingency plans on the shelf, as you like to say.
Sure.
So that's great news. And then on Saturday, Paul and I got called to, there was an EPA emergency response came out looking for pollution that was in Kellogg Creek. And we spent a little bit of time running around with the EPA and the creeks in Western Concord and Eastern Menor, trying to find the source of what was polluting Kellogg Creek. And,
It was Menor.
It was Menor. It was Menor did it.
It was Menor. Wasn't better in Menor that day.
Yeah, they had some water main breaks and on a tributary to Kellogg, and they had done a bunch of work on some concrete streets, which involved cutting and replacing some grinding of concrete and things. And with a rain event, all that dust and particulate flushed into the storm sewer and then into the creeks, which is what made the creeks, Kellogg and everything all cloudy white and downstream. So we found it, anyway, that was the adventure for Saturday afternoon. So that's all, and I've had a few meetings with residents just on zoning matters, and so that's all I have.
No, again, I had the same topic that popped up again, Kathy, is paints of water and water main breaks and where we are with the county. I'd love to get back to some of these residents with regards to some answers. The main complaint is Pine Hill, and the concerns are as we get closer to winter that the freezing and the thawing may break some more. So, and they're talking about you're fixing a break, and as they're finishing that patch, it's breaking 18 to 2 feet right next door to it. So, and they can't get out of the hole. So, I'll call Jason at the county administrator, but just if you get any word or you hear anything, let me know. With regards to department reports, Kathy, what do you got for us?
Did you want to have Mike talk a little bit?
Sure. Mike, you got a report?
Well, one was thrust upon me. There was several residents, as I live in Concord, have asked me questions about some of the zoning issues that have been arisen in that. And one of them, of course, is the innovative site use. And it was clear to me, to some extent, that some explanation needs to be made from a legal standpoint as to what's entailed with the innovative site use at the present time, number one, and number two, how the process works itself, because I think there's a misunderstanding about that. And I get it, because it's a legal principle, a series of legal principles in that. And one of the things that came up was, well, how can they still be considering that when it's been repealed? And one of the things that came up, well, we don't want the trustees to vote for this. And so I'm just going to give a kind of a brief overview of the law on this. And then I'm sure everyone here will not have their minds changed one way or the other. I'm just going to explain how the law works on this. So the first thing is that the innovative site use, which was the subject of the zoning amendment and series of zoning amendments that ultimately was repealed by the trustees, encompassed a large area along the Auburn-Cryle Road corridor. And that innovative site use, regardless of the mechanics of it, is no longer on the books. And it never was on the books because they repealed it as it was proceeding through the process itself. It was never validly enacted. What is on the books, though, so as again a point of information, is there's an innovative site use that is permitted and didn't have anything to do with the zoning amendment process. It is permitted, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about that in a minute, but it is permitted in the Capital District as an innovative site use. And just so everyone's aware, how did it get into the Capital District? It got into the Capital District. It began in 2014 and ultimately was enacted in 2015 in February 6, 2015. And how it got in there was it went through a process like every other zoning amendment process as required under the Ohio Revised Code. What does that mean? It means that the following was done. There was a text that was presented for this particular use in the Capital District. It was before the Zoning Commission. The Zoning Commission scheduled a public hearing on it. They also sent it over to the Lake County Planning Commission, who reviews it and makes recommendations concerning this particular text. That was done. The Lake County Planning Commission recommended the text. There were some modifications, but they recommended the use. There was a public hearing in front of the Zoning Commission. After the Zoning Commission hears the public regarding the pros and cons and how, the input they want to provide, They make a recommendation. They don't make a decision, they make a recommendation as to the particular text to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees receives a recommendation of the Zoning Commission, the information that was provided by the Lake County Planning Commission, and they schedule a public hearing. They schedule a public hearing. The same process is reviewing the text, having citizens and residents of Concord come in and state whether they're in favor of it or against it, then they vote on it. In this particular case, after the 2 public hearings, the review by the Zoning Commission, a recommendation, the review by the Lake County Planning Commission, they put this particular use in the Capital District, and that passed February 6, 2015. So that's long before the amendment process began to expand and get into a little more sophisticated detail what was the subject matter of the proposed legislation that ultimately was repealed by the township. So that's the first point. The second point is, as it's positioned now as a potential use in the in the Capital District, what does that mean? Well, the first thing that's important is it's not a permitted use. It's a conditional use. And under the Ohio Revised Code, when you have a conditional use that's applied for, which would be in this case the innovative site use, it doesn't go in front of the trustees. And in point of fact, and I'll explain this in a little bit more detail, the trustees don't have anything to do with the approval of the use. Under the Ohio Revised Code, a conditional use, which is what this is in the Capital District, is heard before the Board of Zoning Appeals. The Board of Zoning Appeals takes the evidence, they make their decision, and then the use is either granted or it's not granted. And I'll mention as an example, a relatively recent example of that was the Riverside School District coming in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals. The trustees didn't have any decision-making in that either. It went in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals. They make the decision. And there's no next step to the Board of Trustees. Whatever the decision is of the Board of Zoning Appeals, it goes to court if anyone appeals it. And that's how it works. So when there's discussion, and I tell my neighbors, regarding the innovative site use because it's a hot topic, the trustees, if under the current zoning text, if somebody comes in and wants to put an innovative site use in, and by the way, again, it's only in the Capital District, they have to go in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals. That is it. The trustees don't vote on it one way or the other. Now, this particular use, and just as a general definition, a conditional use permit means, as I said earlier, it's not a permitted use. It's a conditional use. And there's certain conditions under the zoning resolution that have to be met, and if they're not met, the conditional use permit is denied. And if they are met, at least in an abstract matter, the Board of Zoning Appeals are supposed to then vote in favor of it. So again, with reference to this particular use, it's limited to jurisdiction in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals, number one. Number two, they have to meet certain conditions within this particular zoning section of the township resolution, which is section 13. And with regard to this particular use and the conditions, there's two other components to it. There's actually a design approval process and also a site plan review process, which interpolate some of the conditions that have to be met. Those are also not in front of the zoning, or excuse me, in front of the Board of Trustees. They're in front of the Planning Commission. And there's two separate areas and sections of the Concord Township zoning resolution where the Zoning Commission, independent of the Board of Zoning Appeals approval, reviews both the design plan and the site plan and makes sure it meets it meets the criteria that's set forth in those particular provisions of the zoning resolution itself. So again, the amendment process that is, I realize is a subject of a hot topic, doesn't have anything to do with this particular currently existing use, which was established in February of 2016, or excuse me, 2015, after all the public hearings I previously described in that. So the next point is, and neighbors have asked me, well, what about this RFP process in that? the RFP process, there's no vote on that. Whoever a developer, if one emerges, and one hasn't emerged yet to be properly considered, but if one emerges, right now, that developer is limited to presenting an application in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals, having the matter heard at a public hearing before the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they make the final decision whether the developer has complied with the uses and conditions under the zoning resolution. Similarly, that same developer that's a product of the RFP process, if one ultimately springs forth and is, deemed to meet the criteria that the board is looking for, at least in terms of the capital district, he still has to go in front of the design review process and the requirements in front of the planning commission. And all three of those components have to be met before the use is actually then established. And again, there's no vote on the part of any of the trustees in that. So that's just a general parameter of what our current zoning resolution states. It's also an overview of how that basically an amendment process takes place under the Ohio Revised Code that ends up with how, in this particular case, there's a site plan conditional use feature in the capital district alone. So, and hopefully distinguish between what was there in February of 2015 as opposed to what is not there and never was there because there was never a validation of the amendment as proposed on both occasions in that. So that's my zoning 101 overview. So,
Thank you, Professor.
well, I'm missing Vanessa's famous PowerPoint presentation, but we didn't get a chance to hook up and synchronize.
I'll get credits for that.
I know. Thank you very much.
Kathy, anything else you want Mike to add to your report?
No, he did a great job. For my report, I guess piggybacking on some of the items that Mike has addressed, Mr. Lucas has addressed, I would like to, clarify and bring up the points related to the town center RFP process. I have also received a handful of, more than a handful of questions regarding that, and so I thought it was, again, useful to make some statements here and clarify that. So I'm just going to go through my list. So at the present time, the RFP process, in our RFP process that began in May, one developer has been qualified to provide a proposal as part of Phase 2, which is the part that we are currently in. The developer has created and submitted a draft visionary plan only to date. As part of that plan, no Section 8 housing has been included in the developer's visionary plan. The developer has not submitted a proposal for consideration yet. Again, that was a draft first step visionary plan for consideration. No plan or proposal has been approved, therefore, at this point, by the township. No master developer agreement is in place or has been agreed upon to move forward with a developer. In this case, right now, as I've stated, we have one developer that has submitted to move forward in this part of the process. This particular developer has just requested an extension of the timeline. That extension has been moved to November 15th in order for their team to further assemble their response and formal plan for consideration. Concord is not under any obligation to approve the developer's proposal once submitted. Again, it is at our election to decide, once we've reviewed everything, if the plan that is submitted is acceptable or not. So some people also have raised concerns and questions regarding when the zoning text was repealed, how that affected the mixed-use town center concept. And as I previously stated, the town center concept in the RFP process was not put on hold and is still moving forward. And as I indicated at the last meeting on September 20th, I confirmed we were in phase 2 of that process. What is different, as Mike alluded to, and I'll just emphasize again, is the zoning boundary that was part of the proposed zoning amendments. Since the repeal of those text amendments, the area within the corridor that allows for this type of development was reduced to the original boundary of the Capital District. There's also been questions regarding the residential piece of the mixed-use town center concept that needs to be clarified. The current zoning requirements for an innovative site PD allows for a limited amount of residential units as a component of a proposed mixed-use commercial development. The predominant uses within the proposal have to be commercial, primarily retail and personal service uses, restaurants, and offices. To be more specific, and as stated in the code, I'm sorry to be technical, but that is the only way I know how to explain this, not more than 30% of the gross acreage of any proposed innovative site plan development shall be used for housing. That includes both townhomes and condo units above commercial structures. Also, under the existing zoning, no vertical, standalone, multifamily buildings are permitted within any proposed innovative site plan development. The innovative site plan development, just to, again, clarify for everybody, is the use listed in the zoning text that would allow for a mixed-use town center concept. So this means no high-rises. Okay, we get that question a lot. No high-rises. The C Capital District does not allow for buildings beyond 60 feet, and that was put into the code back in 2015 at the same time Mike mentioned in February 6th. So in anticipation of this future development and also in conjunction with response to concerns of the residents, our contract with the Sheriff's Department was updated in 2016, in part for additional police protection and patrols. Last year, also, a public safety levy was passed to expand emergency services available to the community. As far as the impact on traffic, 90 and 44 are obviously considered major highways, not neighborhood streets, and they are designed to handle traffic for potential development. As we know, ODOT just completed $13 million in traffic improvements, road improvements for safety, as well as to help facilitate future economic development. With regard to the property that was purchased by the township at the corner of Capitol Parkway and Auburn Road for a potential mixed-use town center project, the land was paid for by income tax dollars generated through the Joint Economic Development District and distributed to the township. It did not come from residents' property taxes. That is a question I also get a lot. Under the JED contract agreement between Concord and the City of Painesville, these income tax revenues that are generated through specifically the JED district are required to be used in part and promoted for economic development. The purchase of the land was intended to control and guide future development and avoid a hodgepodge of business and fast food chains developing on individual lots, thereby creating multiple access points along Auburn Road. The purpose and intent behind an innovative site plan development is to provide an opportunity for a planned, cohesive development through creative design, a variety of land uses, and unique site features that will contribute and improve the values of the surrounding properties and sustain this commercial corridor well into the future. The current zoning and stringent development standards were created with the help of professional land use planners to ensure that that was the path we took. So in closing, if residents have questions of this nature or other questions that are not being answered tonight, I'm asking that you contact me or other members of our staff. We have a wonderful group of staff. They're all in the front row. We've got Deb Esker, our Recreation Director, Heather Freeman is our Planning and Zoning Director, Frank Kraska is our Road and Service Department Extraordinaire, And Chief Matt Sabo is the be-all and end-all of fire and safety under Concord Township. So believe it or not, we are actually pretty good at trying to answer those questions. Or if we can't answer your questions, we will do our best to find the answers for you. So please use us to answer your questions. We will be launching, for your information, a Concord Facts page on our website. There's a placeholder on it now that will include this and other related information for the public to view. There has been a lot of questions to our staff in recent months, and we want to make sure that the information available is in one location on the website, rather than sending everybody to different tabs in different parts of this. So stay tuned for that. I hope that helps, and please, again, call if you have any other questions.
All set, Kathy?
That is enough.
Okay, thank you. Fire Department, Chief Sabo.
Good evening. So in the month of October, we face Fire Prevention Week or Fire Prevention Month. So in October, our fire educator, Ken Whitig, dedicates his time throughout October in Concord Township schools, meeting with the children, meeting with the teachers, and spending time to teach them about fire safety. You may see Ken and the firefighters and our equipment at the schools providing that education. This year's theme is Every Second Counts, Plan 2 Ways Out. So you'll see that on the television station, you'll see it on our website, and kind of looks like this. So always plan 2 ways out. In the month of May, wow. September, we had a total of 215 events, including 16 motor vehicle crashes, 23 agency assists, 14 fire alarms, 1 odor investigation, 34 basic EMS rescues, 70 paramedic rescues, 22 public assists, 3 calls for wires down, and many of you probably saw in the paper about the structure fire that we had recently. That family of 4 was displaced, their home sustained severe damage, and I will stress once again, as I do continuously, there is no reason for anyone in Concord Township not to have working smoke detectors in their home. I have cases of smoke detectors to give. So if anyone needs smoke alarms, smoke detectors, please call us, and we'll make sure that they're installed properly, and we go out and check smoke detectors. So if you have any issues, please call us. The only reason that family, I feel the only reason that family survived was because one family member was sleeping on the couch adjacent to where the fire started. Otherwise, we would have 4 fatalities. I don't want to face that. Our Fire Prevention Bureau was busy as well with 3 plan reviews, 22 annual inspections, 10 follow-up visits, 4 special inspection licensing events, 25 fire protection system testings, and these are all focused on commercial buildings throughout Concord and state facilities. We installed 1 residential lockbox. This is a program that's available to our residents. Typically, it's our senior citizens, so that we don't, if you call 911 and you can't come to the door, we don't have to break the door to get in. So it's a lock, it's a box that mounts to your front door, and inside that box is a key to your home. And the only person that has access to that key is the fire department. No one else has access to that key. We also did 6 public education events and 1 PR event, which was Superheroes Day at Quail Hollow. So that's always fun to play with the kids and then have them come out and check out the trucks.
What was your costume? Were you the Hulk?
I was. I got angry. In 3 consultations. Unfortunately, I missed it. I was supposed to go there, but we had a family emergency, so I missed it. So. But thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief.
Frank, what's going on in the Service Department?
Well, after Pretty heavy start to the meeting tonight. I guess we get down to the meat and potatoes now, right? I had shared a quote from John Wooten yesterday that it's the little details that are vital. Little things make for big things to happen. So that's what I'm going to give you guys, little details. The Service Department has recently received inquiries regarding our playground equipment at Concord Hills Park on Hoos Road, primarily the height and condition of the swing set. As a result, we have ordered new chains that are plastic coated to meet current standards, and it will both lengthen and respond to the concern that was raised. This week, the Garden Club donated a Japanese umbrella pine tree to further enhance the landscape at Concord Hills Park. You'll find this gem located close to the pavilion. Next week, we are hoping to pave the walking path at Barchester Park, just as we did earlier this summer at Concord Hills Park, which, by the way, has a steady stream of activity and is well used. Correct?
That's very true. God's country.
Meanwhile, the Service Department crews in September completed our crack seal program, and we are beginning to wind down our Durapatching for the season. We've completed maintenance on the face of Oak Ridge Dam, removing overgrowth, and cleaned a pond forebay on Eagle Ridge in conjunction with Lake County Stormwater Management Department. We cleaned various roadside ditches on Cascade, Conley, Pine Hill, and Marlow, and also replaced driveway culverts on Althea and Breezewood. This leads us into our road program. Our Service Department concrete crew continued to make progress in September, replacing close to 1,100 square yards of concrete pavement on Colleen Drive, Conestoga Trail, Carriage Hills Drive, Equestrian Court. This brings our season total to nearly 3,000 square yards. Pacheco Cement was awarded a contract to replace Gallant Way cul-de-sac and repair sections on Waterfall Way, which I can report has been completed as of today, which are both located within Quail Hollow subdivision. Combined replacement was nearly 1,400 square yards. I know I've said it before, though I have to say it again. Fixing roads creates inconveniences to residents living close by the construction zones and often creates delays from their normal daily patterns. Again, this summer, I admire Concord residents that recognize and accept road improvements for their end result, not the expedience of the start to the finish. As an example, this week I received this note from a resident on Conestoga Trail. We recently had our section of court, we are at 8075 Conestoga, redone by the Service Road Department. We want to express our thanks and how pleased we were by the professionalism and good work of the crew. They daily completely cleaned up the work area when finished and always left a pathway of vehicles to navigate even while excavating, pouring, etc. The work was done with very little inconvenience and the road is much improved. Thanks again. With a little patience, the reward can be quite palatable. Once again, thanks from the Service Department for this year's accomplishments. And that's when I say thanks to the community, because it's been really easy to work within these work zones and stuff. The people have really accepted our folks as well as our contractors in accomplishing, the difficult projects that sometimes have to be carried out. On Saturday, October 14th, from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., our final brush and yard waste drop-off will take place. Service Department personnel will be on hand to assist residents in the offloading of these materials at our Service Department garage located at 7229 Ravenna Road, right behind the Town Hall. Tree limbs, twigs, and branches 4 inches in diameter or less will be accepted. Yard waste will be accepted in biodegradable bags and easily handled containers which can be dumped by hand. No plastic bags, please, are permitted. The brush will be chipped and made available to the residents on a first-come, first-served basis during regular business hours, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we do send out the yard waste to have it recycled and reused again as well. As we approach the winter season, mailbox snow barricades are available to Concord residents. Applications can be obtained on our website at www.concordtwp.com or stop by Town Hall during business hours. Cost for the barricades this year, which include installation, is only $40. Over 500 residents are already participating, and we installed 10 just this week. Please visit Township website or our Township website for regular updates, current events, and related information. In closing, we wish our residents well and have a good evening.
Thank you.
I figured you'd end with a go tribe.
Go Tribe.
Heather Freeman, zoning department.
Good evening. Thank you. During the month of September, the zoning department office has been busy processing zoning permits applications. We processed a total of 41 and collected just over $5,800 in fees just in the month of September. Of those 41 permits, the most requested zoning permit applications were for fences, sheds, and single-family dwellings. Year to date, our office has processed a total of 354 zoning permit applications. Last year total, we did 408, so I think we're on track to exceed that number. And then as far as permit applications for new dwellings, we are at 69 for the year compared to last year. For the year end, we are at 77. So we're going to probably exceed last year's number slightly as well. And also during the month of September, the Board of Zoning Appeals heard 2 applications requests for conditional use permits, of which one was denied and one was approved. And that's it.
Thank you. Deb, Recreation Department.
Good evening. The Concord Township Recreation Department is offering an engaging variety of leisure classes this fall. And while you're not watching the Indians game and cheering on the Tribe to victory this postseason, check us out for these fun and informative classes designed with our residents in mind. We've got Tai Chi for strength and relaxation, Pound, a class that uses weighted drumsticks to rock out your workout, Essential Oils 101, photography from A to Z, adult cooking classes using fall produce like cabbages, apples, and pears, a kids' Monster Mash cooking class, Mahjong, how to play the game as well as strategies to win it, computer-controlled Christmas lights, where you learn to program your holiday lights to music, Dot Rocks, a class where you paint beautiful designs on rocks that you can keep or leave in nature for others to find and enjoy and maybe rehide, Put Your Best Self Forward, a class that's designed to help you look your best anytime, anywhere. We have fall tennis camps going on at Concord Hills Park, and Ghost Stories of Lake County at Concord's historic Old Stone School, all this month. Seats are available in most of the classes, so go online to concordtwp.com and sign up, or call the Recreation Department to register. Thanks to all of those who attended this afternoon's 55-plus group gathering that explained the upcoming changes to Medicare. Our next 55-plus group gathering is Wednesday, October 18th, when the League of Women Voters will host a candidates forum at the Community Center. Please join the Recreation Department and the businesses at Gristmill Village on Thursday, October 26th for our 9th annual Halloween Haunt. The haunt begins promptly at 6:30 p.m. inside Riders Market Cafe, where kids receive their first treats of the evening. And then they trick-or-treat their way through the shops at Gristmill Village, including the businesses across the parking lot, so parents must accompany the kids. The haunt will proceed regardless of the weather, so please dress appropriately, which at this point could be flip-flops and shorts or your winter parka. It's Ohio. Thanks to Riders Market and the businesses at Gristmill Village for their continued participation in our haunt, and to the Concord Township Fire Department because they always bring a fire truck and treats for this family-friendly event. As always, neighborhood trick-or-treating will be on Halloween, October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m., so please watch out for those little goblins roaming around your neighborhood and help us keep them safe. Get your zombie on at the Thriller Dance Workshop and Party on Friday, October 27th at the Concord Community Center. Learn the choreography in Michael Jackson's Thriller video, and then bust a move at our 2nd annual Thriller Halloween Zombie Party. Zombie attire is encouraged and will be photographed. If you love taking pictures, enter the Concord Township Photo Contest this fall. Photos will be on display from October 21st through November 9th at the Vista Springs Quail Highlands Gallery at 7960 Auburn Road, just south of the Community Center. Entry forms can be found on the Township's website or picked up at the Community Center, and the deadline to enter is October 19th. And as the holiday season approaches, take the stress out of parties by renting the Concord Community Center for your get-together. It's the perfectly centrally located place to hold your holiday party. You can check out pictures of our facility on the Township's website or stop by for a tour and details. We're located at 7671 Auburn Road, across from Tri-Point Hospital. All this information and more can be found in the fall edition of the Township newsletter, The Concord Grapevine, and on the Concord Township website at concordtwp.com, or contact the Recreation Department directly at 440-639-4650. And I'd also like to give one more shout out to the Fire Department, because they occasionally do staff trainings for the Recreation Department. And another one is happening the evening of October 18th, where they're going to train the recreation staff in emergency management, some medical training refresher, active shooter refresher, severe weather refresher. We appreciate that they do this for us, and it gives our staff more skills in case of an emergency situation when our guests are renting the community center. So thanks again to the Fire Department. Thank you, and go Tribe.
Hey, Deb, I got a question.
Sure.
So we had some complaints this year about having Halloween or trick-or-treating on Halloween because it's a Tuesday from 6 to 8. And the ability to change that was affected by the simple fact that we've had every single other community is going to do it on Halloween. So I guess the question becomes, if we start earlier, and I'm not sure if it's your department or our department, to start working with the surrounding communities about maybe making it whether it's a Friday or Saturday. And so I guess when you have your event at Gristmill, maybe check with some of the mothers or get some input.
Sure.
And then we can start to advocate their position to the other communities. You tell us whatever the best way to do that is, whether it's on your end or our end or both ends. But I think their movement is to have it sometime during the weekend.
Sure, will do.
Okay,
Got it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Concord Law Enforcement.
Good evening.
Evening.
Month of September, the Sheriff's Office handled 1,440 calls for service in Concord Township, 2 injury accidents, 12 property damage accidents. We had adult male arrests for possession and trafficking in drugs, and 2 for disorderly conduct. We had 273 crime prevention cards, 19 citations issued, 127 warnings on traffic stops, 2 driving under suspension citations, and 1 OVI. New investigations for Concord Township. We had assaults on Auburn Road, Melridge, Girdled Road, and Village Drive. We had a breaking and entering on Auburn Road, breaking and entering to a vehicle on Easton Way, a burglary on Deer Haven. We handled drug cases, 2 on Auburn Road, 1 on Andrea Drive, and 1 on Concord Hamden Road. Theft cases, we had 3 thefts on Auburn Road, 4 on Girdled Road, 2 on Concord Hamden, 2 on Hermitage, 2 on Barchester, 1 on Sittingbourne, and 1 on Friedel Drive. We had a vandalism on South Meadow, and a stolen vehicle on Auburn Road, and a stolen vehicle on Morley Road. And that's all I've got. Go Tribe.
Well done. Well done. Sergeant Harshey learns fast.
All right, Senior Service Levy, Issue 4.
Hello, good evening. Thanks for having me say a few words today. My name is Aaliyah Barajas. I'm the Senior Services Coordinator with the Board of Lake County Commissioners, and I just want to give you all some information today about Issue 4, which is the Senior Services Levy. So, in 1992, Lake County voters approved a $500,000 levy to fund senior services across the county. The voters have renewed the levy every 5 years and recognize the importance of the services provided with the levy funding. Today, these include home-delivered and congregate meals, social work and homemaker services, programs at the senior centers across the county, home maintenance and modification projects, and much more. However, we face 2 big challenges in maintaining these programs. Number 1, federal funding for senior services continues to decline and is now lower than 2008 levels. In fact, today the federal government only invests $29.75 for every senior. Second, the demand for senior services here in Lake County is growing rapidly. The percentage of Lake County residents 60 and older will increase from 24% to 34% by 2030, and will actually outnumber youth 20 years and younger here in Lake County. This significant growth is higher than both the Northeast Ohio region and the state as a whole. As we age, chronic disease, disability, elder abuse and neglect, affordable housing, poverty, isolation, and inadequate nutrition will present growing challenges. To help make up for the major funding gaps and growing needs, we are placing an issue on the November ballot to renew and slightly increase the existing levy. An increase in levy funds would allow for additional senior services such as adult guardianship services and expanded protected services for older adults. The issue would be an increase of 87 cents per month per $100,000 home value. Without it, we risk having to drastically reduce the services that thousands of our oldest and most vulnerable elderly citizens count on every day. Thanks. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay, that takes us to the audience portion. Anyone want to speak? Come on up here. If you would just state, although we know your name, but if you would just state your name for the record and your address, it'd be much appreciative.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Brian Massey, 8196 Rainbow Drive here in Concord. And I'd like to start by first making a sort of a public service announcement. Perhaps those in the audience would like to hear this, and maybe those at home. But I want to tell you about an experience I had with the News Herald. I wrote an opinion piece for the News Herald, had to deal with illegal aliens. The News Herald took it upon themselves to change the words illegal aliens. They inserted undocumented immigrants. When I called the News Herald, they said that the Associated Press had determined that the phrase illegal aliens will not be used, and it will be substituted with undocumented immigrants. I think it's very sad when our free press will not report what is actually happening, and they bring it upon themselves to make changes what our citizens are saying. Next question I have is for the trustees. I sent an email to the trustees asking for a meeting. Did you get that email?
Yes.
Yes.
We did not have that meeting. May I ask, did you have other meetings with other residents that may be your supporters?
No, and in fact, I thought, if I understood it correctly, I think I was designated to meet with you.
I said all three, any of them. It did not matter. I was
No,
not specifically saying you.
I will meet with you, and I apologize. I thought we extended that to you. If you want to wait and after tonight, and we'll set up a meeting time.
Yeah, because I truly believe that the trustees must represent all of the residents.
Sure.
And not just your supporters. I have to say that I've done a lot of inspection of the financial information, and one thing that comes to mind is that safety levy. I have to say that I am vehemently opposed to your making that a combined police and safety levy. Also, I also am extremely upset that you made it a continuous. For those that don't know, continuous means forever. You've taken the vote away from the taxpayers. I don't think that was a very wise decision. I noticed that NOACA provided a $2,049,000 loan for our project. How instrumental was NOACA in developing the plan or your vision for the town center? Did they have any input? Or was this vision the vision of the trustees? Because I can tell you that for those that may be listening, NOACA has been known to support the Marxist UN Agenda 21 social engineering to redefine America. The United Nations program lays out a comprehensive plan of sustainable development locally, nationally, and globally in every area where humans affect the environment. Basically, it's UN's plan to establish control over all human activity, including man's reputed contribution to climate change. The UN is at the hub of the global network working to submerge the independence of nations in a world government controlled by the elite. So if they had input in that, I object to them having input in what's happening in my local community. I mentioned last time that we spent $319,000 on Reisinger, the consulting group. I also found out that we spent $85,000 with Buxton Company. As I understand, they're a company that develops demographic studies for your area. With all of the other consulting groups, we spent probably close to $500,000 on consultants for that project. I also noticed that in talking to county commissioners, our local government fund distribution, money that is given by the state of Ohio back to the communities. There's 26 different political cities, villages, townships. Concord Township ranks 17. There was $9.5 million distributed by the state. We got 114,000, 1.19%. I'd like to make sure that the trustees are fighting for us. I'm going to the county commissioners tomorrow. We may not get any more money, but Y Mentor gets $1.5 million. Lake Metro Park gets $155,000, and we get $114,000. I want the trustees fighting for the people in this community. I'm also a little surprised. Catch me off guard. I thought you had told me in prior meetings that the town center project was dead. You won't have to worry about it. It's over. And now hearing Kathy say that it's not over. I'm confused. Is it over or not? What I'm looking for, gentlemen, and Ms. Lute, I don't mean to exclude you. I'm looking for trustees to fight for the people. As I've told you before, I think that if we stay on our current path of these escalating real estate taxes, we are going to start pricing those living on fixed incomes out of their homes that they've worked all their lives to achieve. I just don't think that's fair. Please fight for us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any additional audience portion before we address Mr. Massey's questions?
Hi, Vanessa Pesic, 11705 Cali Court. First of all, I'd like to thank you for that very detailed discussion regarding the whole master developer concept. I think it's really important because people are, as Mr. Massey said, very surprised when they realize that the town center concept may become a reality with the existing zoning. Just for the record, I was, of course, at the Lake County Planning Commission and attended the Zoning Commission meeting and the trustee meeting in 2015 and was opposed and gave a number of reasons why I didn't feel that that was appropriate at the time. And I still feel the same way. I'd like to state the obvious. The trustees hire all of the people, the administrator and the people in the zoning department, and you also appoint all of the people on the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Zoning Commission. So you are in charge of what goes on in the township, and the buck does stop with you. So it's nice to say, well, the Board of Zoning Appeals are the people who are going to be making the decisions, or somebody else is going to be making the decisions. But you've been steering this boat for quite some time, and I hope that you will steer it in the right direction. as I said, people were very surprised. 57 companies were notified of the RFP here in 2017, including it being on the Urban Land Institute website. Of course, this was a password-protected website on the Concord website, but only the people that knew the password could get in. So that's why it's surprising for people to hear about the RFP and the master developer, because the citizens would not and could not get onto that site, only if you had a special password. But of the 57-plus companies that were given this master developer proposal, only one company responded, which I feel is a pretty poor response rate. This simple fact shows that the town center in Concord Township isn't a good idea. Developers don't think it's viable. I think that there are 3 reasons that the town center isn't a good idea. We've talked about them in the past. Concord needs long-term sustainable tax-generating revenue from commercial and light industrial companies, not residential units inside that area. We have precious 8% commercial, and we need to keep it that way. Retail is dying, we all know that, and we'll be left with decreasing value residential units and vacant retail office space. Just look at the Willoughby project that was a similar project, a little bit different but similar. In Willoughby, the commercial places are empty. And third, increased traffic and congestion. Your traffic studies on which the road construction that was just completed didn't include this town center, this high-density town center concept. So we will be back to having to have additional road construction and additional traffic. For these reasons, many citizens request that you do additional homework and that you realize that the town center concept in Concord isn't viable, that you educate everyone, including the Zoning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals, based on your additional homework. We hope that you will also let the citizens have a voice in the type of development Concord should invite into this area, and that we encourage all residents to hear all sides of this story, and feel free to go to the Defend Concord website, defendconcord.com, for more information, and contact us as well. You can make all the difference in whether or not the master developer is assigned, and we hope that you will say no. Thank you.
All right, any additional members of the audience who'd like to speak? All right, thank you.
Faith Andrews, 10441 Cloudy.
Faith, you just, let's not make it political. And so, and I'm not saying that you are, so if you just would, but Vanessa knows that she's not supposed to make it political. If you would just please comply with our rules.
I can't believe that you would even, I'm offended.
No,
Here are the 2 questions I have.
I don't.
There's been a lot of rumors. I've heard about income tax coming into the JED. Can you confirm that or not? That's one question I have, is I've heard that there's income tax being proposed coming into the JED for the residents that would, anything within the JED. Okay, so I just need to have an answer on that. And then I know that the legislation that has been repealed took away referendum capability for residents with regard to development in the JED. I'm just wanting to know whether or not under the current zoning laws we still have referendum capability. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
I didn't mean to. Well. All right. Listen.
Want me to?
No, just real quick. We're trying not to make this matter about politics, we're talking about governance, not a particular candidate, not a particular position. I didn't mean to imply anything else except that the last speaker, I thought, misspoke, and I was just making sure that we all understood the rules. With respect to Faith, your question with regards to the Joint Economic Development District, which is the JED, produces an income tax. It has been producing an income tax since 2008. That's the purpose of the Joint Economic Development District. If there is a mixed-use development inside a JED and there is a resident that is inside that mixed-use development pursuant to the JED, that individual could would have an income tax as well. That is a change in the law that the Ohio Revised Code did back in September of 2016. Additionally, prior to then, residents were allowed to be inside a JED. They just couldn't start there, so they could be added on later on. And so that's the history of the law. With regards to referendums can always take place after something is passed and within, I believe it's by filing it within 30 days to the Board of Elections. So there's been no change in referendum law. That's pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code. And then again, the JED law is again pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code. Getting back to Mr. Massey's comments, and I want to take some time because I actually share his sentiments on some, and then others with regards to the safety levy and the combined levy of the police and fire. They were combined because we found historically that our police and our fire work hand in hand together. That was created by many times when there is an incident, police and fire are both called there, and so therefore they've been working together in a cohesive group. We need them both. We need them on the scene both, and so we combine them as a safety levy. The continuous portion of that is right. It provides a base and stability for both organizations. That being said, historically, Concord Township has repealed levies that were not necessary or were overburdened. And I can tell you that back, I believe in the 80s, Connie, you repealed the last police levy.
It was in the 90s.
90s?
Yeah, 92.
92.
Yeah.
So
93, I think.
So there's an historic precedent with regards to that. With regards to NOACA funds, NOACA had no decision-making with Concord Township on anything. However, they did provide us funds. And when you mentioned that whether or not the township fights for funds from other agencies, they do so, NOACA being one, ODOT and safety levies or safety dollars have been two that assisted in the creation of the recent project. The Buxton numbers and the Risinger numbers, although you and I may disagree on the value of those numbers, what is created is they provide analytics so that we can provide to entities that would like to relocate to Concord Township. If we're talking about building up this commercial corridor, and we're talking about stabilizing our taxes for senior citizens and stabilizing our tax dollars for our residents, and we're talking about making improvements on the 8% of that commercial corridor, we had to provide analytics to get entities here. And so that's why Starbucks is here. That's why Drug Mart is here, or being built here. That's why other entities are going to be coming here. Talking about town center and what that town center looks like. I don't necessarily know what everybody's vision of what that looks like, whether or not a developer comes here and provides a vision, or what Chris Galloway's vision is, or Connie Luda's vision is, or what any resident's vision is for that. However, if we're talking about a developer that wants to come here and put something here, that will be presented to the township, that will be presented to the Board of Zoning Appeals, if it has to be a conditional use permit, or the zoning commission, or the trustees, in whatever fashion that, somehow that entity wants to arrive here. And there's gonna be public hearings on it. And I hope that residents come here and help and shape that so that it mixes with the fabric of Concord Township. That being said, I don't know if anybody who could say that the town center is a bad idea if we don't exactly know exactly what the town center is. What we're looking for is some entity that decides that wants to develop that area and shape that. Now, what that does is that builds out a commercial corridor. If it's on Concord Township's property, it's going to be a brand new entity that's going to pay significantly higher property tax dollars, which should relieve the tax burden of residents. It will pay Joint Economic Development District JED tax dollars, that would be income tax dollars, so that would also additionally not burden the residents, but in fact what it will do is we will have more tax dollars coming into this township, so that we can go ahead and stabilize our property tax dollars. I don't have anything additional. Connie, do you have something?
No.
Chris?
Yeah, I would just, really quick, on Faith's questions, I would say that some of that is some of the confusion and lack, or sort of a non-understanding of what the JED is. And I see a lot of that when I talk to the public about the JED and RFP and the zoning text overlay. There's a lot of cross-pollination of these things, and I think a little bit of confusion. I think you sort of outlined it. I mean, the JED itself is a district that is established jointly by the City of Painesville and the Concord Township for the purpose of establishing, among other things, an income tax within that designated area. So by definition, so if you have somebody ask you, Faith, I hear there's income tax coming to the JED, that's what a JED is, in part. Now, it also is other things. It provides discounted electric and water to those that are in it. It also, provides economic development support, business development support. But by definition, one of the major functions of a JED is the income tax. Now, that being, I think what the real question that people are probably asking you is, and I had somebody ask me today, is this going to apply to everybody in the township? And the answer to that is no. A JED is not allowed to be applied specifically to residential properties, so it cannot be applied to somebody on Andrea Drive or on South Meadow or anything of that nature, or Prouty Road. The state of Ohio 2 years ago did change the JED laws, where they previously did not allow as part of a commercial development, residents within a JED to be subjected to the income tax, those residences within a mixed-use development. And a mixed-use development is completely separate of a JED. They are not the same thing. They are completely separate things. One is a private development, a JED is a government entity, and then subsequent zoning is its own matter as well. The state of Ohio changed that law that said if you have a mixed-use development, those that choose to live within it would also be subjected to the JED income tax. So unless somebody were to move into a mixed-use development that was within the JED, there would be no subjection of the income tax, the payroll tax, to anyway. So the population as a whole, you know, those of us in our neighborhoods and our homes and everything, it does not apply. You also asked about the repealed legislation and as it relates to that text and the JED. Again, that's zoning text. The JED is completely separate. The JED has nothing to do with zoning. There is no function of zoning within the JED. The JED is its own separate entity that doesn't have any impact, effect, or anything of that nature on zoning. Zoning is established by the township and the township alone. And as Paul mentioned, the referendum process that was discussed as part of that repealed legislation is therefore null and void, and under Ohio Revised Code, the referendum process remains in all other elements of the zoning text. Correct if I'm wrong, I mean, I think anybody can referendum anything, any vote of the trustees. I mean, even if we vote on a PO.
No, the statute that they're talking about is 519.12, and it's specifically referenced with the passage of legislation through the process that I described at the beginning of the meeting. So at the end of the meeting, the process, if the Board of Trustees hypothetically puts into effect a new zoning classification, the township residents have a period of time under the statute in which to file a referendum, get the signatories to put it on the ballot and that.
What decisions by the Board of Trustees are subject to a referendum?
Well, legislative.
Any legislative?
I don't want to, you know what? The 519.12 provision deals strictly with zoning. I don't know because I didn't look at potential referendum outside of that. So.
I was always under the impression that any legislative action by the Board of Trustees is potentially subject to a referendum under that same process.
No.
And maybe there are some limitations.
Yeah. There's, the zoning passage is definitely delineated by statute. I don't know, I have to look at, see what other provisions of the referendum would apply. It's never been historically brought out ever, although it's being asked, and I understand that. There's no, I mean, when you're passing, for instance, a zoning, if you're passing legislation, all right, authorizing the township to enter into a contract, there's no referendum on that.
Okay.
All right? There's no referendum when you're authorizing a road improvement on a particular area because grant money's involved and you want to have a delineation of that with reference to a resolution. There's no referendum on that. So.
Okay, good. Thank
And
you.
by the way, whatever's extant right now, there's no referendum on that.
Right.
Okay, so.
Well, I appreciate that clarification. I would just, Mr. Massey's comment, as Paul mentioned, NOACA is not involved in anything that we do as it relates to our zoning, RFP process, mixed-use development proposals, fire levies, nothing. So I'm not sure how to answer it any more directly than that. I would say that the dollars that were received, a little over $2 million from NOACA, were in fact a grant towards our process, which is again acting as a pass-through agent from the federal government towards our road project. And then regarding the local government fund, Brian, I would say that, listen, I welcome your involvement. You will know that the dollars that Concord Township receives, that is typically based on a formula based on the types of programs that communities are doing. I think if you looked at that list, and I haven't seen the list that you referenced ranking communities, my guess is the townships in this county are all at the bottom. And that's because of the restrictions that we have under Ohio Revised Code in terms of what we are allowed to do as a government. Entities like Mentor and Willowick and Willoughby do a lot more type of social net programs and other things of that nature, so that they are then eligible for funds that we are not necessarily eligible for. But I would take some exception to the suggestion that we don't fight for the residents. I'm in my 12th year in this job, and I have fought for this township for thousands of man hours of mine, whether it's advocating for this township before the commissioners, in Columbus in front of our legislature, and changes to Ohio Revised Code that would assist this township and other townships. Going to DC to advocate for this township. Just 2 weeks ago, I was there on private business, took time out of my schedule to go meet with the Postal Service, go meet with Congressman Dave Joyce, because as a lot of people know, a lot of folks would love to see our own zip code in Concord Township. We have 3 zip codes, and people ask us all the time, why can't we have our own zip code as Concord Township? And so I went and met with them. And, so folks know, the only way you can get a zip code is through an act of Congress. And as luck would have it, right now, there's a postal bill in committee in the House, and the congressman has indicated that he will insert language into that for Concord Township to get its own zip code. It's been a long time coming on that, a good decade waiting for a postal bill, waiting for a vehicle for us to be able to pursue something like that. Whether it's out in a stream on a Saturday looking for a source of pollution in Kellogg Creek that had generated calls from our residents, whether it's fighting ODOT to get additional dollars for projects in this township, tightening our zoning code, tightening up the RCD zoning, installing riparian setbacks so that we work towards improving our stormwater, working on grants through the federal government, going and meeting with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to get grants to remove those condos below the Brightwood Lake Dam. We have advocated for this township night and day on a whole plethora of issues. So I welcome you to the fight on it, but please don't suggest that we're just sitting here 1 meeting a month or 2 meetings a month on a Wednesday and sort of just, I don't know what you think we're doing. But I can tell you right now that I have spent an exorbitant amount of time advocating for the residents of this township in a whole plethora of ways, whether it's financially, working to bring Starbucks here. That was a 5-year process. And why? Because a lot of people asked for it. People wanted it. So we do those things. We work at those things. So if I seem a little impassioned, I am, because the suggestion that we're not fighting for our residents, I think, is erroneous. And lastly, no one up here ever said the town center project was dead. In fact, I specifically remember answering Vanessa's question about the RFP process and what the outcome is going to be and where is it going, and saying we don't know because it's ongoing. The legislation that revolved around zoning text overlay was terminated by this board because we didn't feel we could build a consensus within the community on the elements of that text. That doesn't mean that I've changed my opinion on the fact that Concord Township should be doing everything it can to exert control and provide direction on the development in that corridor. If we do not try to exert that control and try to push what would be a better outcome, we will end up with a disjointed use of hodgepodge uses up and down Auburn Road, Cryle Road, in that area, and it'll look more like Vine Street. You've heard me say it before. It'll end up looking like Tyler Boulevard and Menor, and I think at the end of the day, that is a failure for this township. Because I think that end result, looking like that, there is not anybody in this room or out there in TV land that's going to be happy with that. And so, yes, we are committed to trying to have a cohesive vision for that corridor that fits what Concord Township is, and we will continue to work toward that within the constructs of the existing zoning, as Mike and Kathy had so eloquently outlined earlier. I guess I'll leave it there.
Just one last thing, and people, members of the Board of Zoning Appeals or members of the Zoning Commission are appointed by trustees, but I will tell you that there are members of both those committees who have been on for decades that have been here. And I could tell you that I don't see them often, I don't speak with them often, but they're their own independent people. Just as people that are on the Planning Commission are their own independent people, that I don't think they take any direction by the commissioners that appoint them. I think that people are independent people that live here in Concord Township, that want to make the right decisions in Concord Township. I think there are some decisions that are very, very easy for them to make. There's some decisions that are very, very hard to make. And from what I know, their process, they do their homework, and they don't get paid to do their homework, but they do their homework, and before they arrive here, they've already seen sites and reviewed documents and reviewed plans, and had questions with both, Heather, sometimes Kathy when she was in that position, or Mike's office, and going through those things. So, I think those individuals do a lot for this township and shaping it the way it looks and the way it behaves today. And so
I think it's important to point out that, yes, the trustees appoint. Some of them we inherited. Some there were resignations, and we interviewed people, asked for applications, and put people in those places. But those boards are, under Ohio Revised Code, fully autonomous. They do not work at the behest of the trustees. They're not removable midterm. They are in 5-year terms. Their terms are longer than trustees. That's by design under Ohio Revised Code. And I can tell you that it has always been the practice of this board that we do not interfere in their business. And they come to their own conclusions on matters, and that's how we operate, because that's how the law intends us to operate, and because they are autonomous boards, and we treat them as such. So.
Right. And sometimes the things that we want to do take years. And as an example, about 10 years ago, I tried to get our own zip code and was unsuccessful. I'm surprised that you even were able to talk about it.
Well, it's just one of those things that there's a postal reform bill.
Yeah.
So there's now an opportunity.
That's
so,
right.
I decided to go for it. But so we'll see. So keep your fingers crossed that Congress finds a way to get something done and moves that bill out of the House into the Senate and so forth. So
I'd entertain a vote for the September financial statements.
So moved.
I will second those, and those were provided to us by our fiscal officer.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Christian County, we are going to be closed on Monday, October 9th, in observance of Columbus Day. On Wednesday, October 11th at 7 p.m., we're going to have a BZA meeting in Town Hall. October 14th, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., we're going to have brush and yard waste at Town Hall campus. On October 18th at 6:30 at trustees' office hours. At 7:30, we'll have the trustees meeting. There's trick-or-treating again on October 31st from 6 to 8. The firemen and the police officers from the sheriff's department will be out there for safety. And then, Deb, one more time, when's the grist mill for the kids?
Thursday, October 26th.
Thursday, October 26th.
6:30 p.m. Riders.
6:30 p.m. at Riders. And please let Riders know, thank you for that. Okay, with that, we'll close the meeting.
Thank you.